Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Reese and I'm just hanging out here in the woods getting some fresh air. And I just thought we'd talk a little bit about having an attitude of gratitude. And I know some of you must be thinking, Miss Reese, are you serious? But I really am. One person I enjoy talking to at school is Miss Kowalik, and her office is right across the hall from mine, and we both pop in once in a while to share ideas and thoughts. And I just love her insight on the brain and how God's design of our brain works within our lives. So Tuesday we had a webinar for your parents, and Miss Kowalik started talking about the brain, and it got me thinking about our attitudes during this time. Does everyone have an attitude of gratitude? Do I? Everyone is learning a new normal for continuing on with education, and it's taken a lot of time, and we've had to put so much time and energy into that area of our lives. What could we be neglecting? What has the new normal looked like in terms of our emotional and especially our spiritual well-being? When I was reading about the brain this week, I was reminded that our brains are wired to be 5 times more tuned into negativity and greater sensitivity to unpleasant news. I was really maybe not surprised at that. I remember the Democratic Party presidential debates when I was watching that, and how that was fueled by negative comments from one person about another. Lots of comedians, when you think about stand-up comedy or things that happen in the movies that are funny, are people putting each other down or just being rude or obnoxious to each other, and that's what we find funny. Some of the memories that you have. I know I'm 52, but in elementary school, what I remember is, I had some good times, but I also had a really negative experience, and that plays out in my mind. We had a lesson on syllables in English, and part of the lesson was, you clap to know how many syllables are in the word. So if I said, my name is Judy, how many syllables do I have? It's Judy. I have 2 syllables. Well, we did a homework assignment, and I was very proud of it. I wrote down everything I wanted to say, and I had my syllables, and I had like the number with the period next to it, just enough space for the answer. I was really proud of myself. And my teacher started coming down my row, and I was getting real excited, and she got to my paper, and she put it down, and she said, "Oh, no," and rolled her eyes. And I said, "What's wrong? What happened?" She says, "Number 3 is wrong." Well, number 3 was the word oil. And my mother is from Baltimore, and she says oil, but I say oil. So I put 2 syllables. Well, she got very upset and put me down in front of the whole class and laughed at me because oil has 1 syllable. So I felt really awful about that. And here I am, 52 years old, remembering that more than anything else. So unfortunately, that is really true, that our brain has a tendency to remember those stressful things. Even though I was a safety at school, I played the orchestra in elementary school, I was on the honor roll, those things, that negative experience is what I remember. What about you? When thinking about your interactions lately with your family and friends, do you have a tendency to be reminded first of problems from the past? Do you automatically assume like, oh yeah, they let me down, so they're going to let me down again? I might as well react to it that way. For those of us that drive, when you see an accident ahead, does your curiosity cause you to slow down and look to see what happened because you're curious? And it helps your sense of to know what's happening in the world. So if our minds are wired to be more negative, how does that impact us during this time when things are different, when there's more uncertainty about the future, and when we're all feeling more stress? So I did a test on my thoughts from the past few weeks, and this is what I discovered right here. Here is my negative thoughts, and here is my positive thoughts. So I had more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. And I was really surprised by that. But then I listened to the announcements on April 2nd, and one of the things I said in the announcements was, "Wow, we're stuck at home." And I thought to myself, what a terrible thing to say. Those are thoughts that we need to keep captive. A better way to approach that would have been, while we're safe at home, because not everyone is. So I was a little surprised because I do consider myself a positive person. And how did these little negative thoughts start invading my life and my interactions with my family, friends, and more importantly, my relationship with God? So I believe during this time, even though focusing on engaging our minds and exercising our bodies is very, very important, I think we also need to feed our spirits. Miss Reese, what are you talking about, feeding your spirit? Well, I will tell you this. What we give the most attention to will become the most influential in our lives. So the past few weeks, I have been overcome by information, opinions, listening to others' frustrations and disappointments. You know, if we withhold fulfillment from our mind, we get really upset and we act out on that. And if we're bored, we're going to find something else to do. If our bodies are hungry, you know what's going to happen? Our stomach is going to growl. But when our spirit, on the other hand, isn't getting fed or it's unfulfilled, it gets quiet. Feeding your spirit and connecting with God and His Word needs to be intentional. It's a choice that you make every day. I know President Trump, in many of his addresses to us, talked about the invisible enemy. He was talking about the virus that is changing life as we know it. But my husband reminded me that there also is a spiritual invisible enemy named Satan. Ephesians 4:27 says, "And do not give the devil a foothold. He's wanting us to be rendered useless, and he wants us to feel powerless." Over the past week, I've already seen our families and students and teachers rise above the latest challenges. But not only are we called to rise above, but 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18 says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." So today was the day my husband and I were going to Florida to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. I have to say, I should be in the car now, and I'm a little disappointed. But it's okay to feel disappointed. But it's not okay to stay there. The problem comes when our negatively wired brain leans on our own understanding, focuses on ourselves, and what we're missing instead of how big God is. God knows the desires of our hearts, and I believe for those that are faithful, He will do something amazing. I know it's hard to imagine an attitude of gratitude when so many of us are exhausted and overwhelmed. But I just want to remind you of the story of David and Goliath. Even though Goliath was such a giant next to David, David never cowered and became victorious eventually because his eyes were focused on God. If we focus our eyes on God, we too can be victorious. So in the middle of this order to stay at home, God calls us to have an attitude of gratitude. Now, gratitude isn't a feeling or emotion, but it's a state of appreciation. It's the spiritual discipline. It realigns us to God and increases His activity in our lives. Our circumstances will change every day, but we can approach this Easter season with the truth from Hebrews 13:8, that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So what I chose to do is I chose to make a gratitude cup, something that will help keep me focused. This is a choice every day. I think of Dorothy walking down the yellow brick road with Toto after she leaves the Munchkins, and she comes up to the Scarecrow, and the Scarecrow says, "You can go that way, or that way is nice." We have a choice every day when we get up. what road we're going to head down. I want to encourage you to have a gratitude cup. I made these gratitude jars for the teachers at the beginning of the school year to fill these out and to hold those thoughts captive. And at the end of the day or the end of the week, read them as a family. God has never disappointed us. And as we go into this Easter season, I want you to be encouraged and hopeful that Jesus is the reason for this season. Thanks, everybody. Have a blessed day.